Camilla and Charles were in a relationship prior to Charles meeting Diana. He was always in love with Camilla. They would not allow him to marry the person he wanted to marry. Can we stop shaming women for their looks, being disrespected or undermined? That Diana cheated on Charles, consistently breaking protocol rules, that she was planning on having the crown pass over Charles. Hey guys, so today's video, I wanted to talk about Princess Diana and now King Charles, and some of the things that I've learnt recently, which has kind of broken the rose-tinted glasses, if you will, of Diana. Now, this isn't to say that Diana was ever a bad person. I can see the... Hi. What's up? I know, give me like an hour. Good boy. I wanted to talk about this because, to start off, so when Princess Diana passed away, I was like 4, I want to say 4 or 5 at most. I was really young. Oh no, excuse me, 1997. Okay, so I was 7. First of all, Diana was married to Prince Charles at the time. It has been said as an accident, we will get into that, but she died on the 31st of August 1997. She was very, very beloved in the UK. Like I said, I was about 7-8 years old at the time, so I had no memory of her. I didn't have this sort of love for her that everyone else in the UK had, and even people in other countries seem to have. I think a lot of people liked her because she was very down to earth, from what I understand. She didn't tend to follow the monarchy traditions or rules. However, I can see it from another side. She was always called the People's Princess, but I never saw her as my princess, as it were. I didn't get upset the way I got with the Queen because I hadn't been 30 odd years of always having her there. However, I do appreciate, because I've now gone through that loss of a queen, I do understand why people would have been upset at her passing. But I do think that some people are overlooking at least some things, or at least choosing to forget. I feel like when people pass away sometimes, we forget the bad moments, the moments that could change your opinion of them. So I want to go through some of the things that have changed my opinion a little bit, or at least made me see things from a different perspective than the original. Diana was the perfect people's princess, and therefore no one's ever allowed to say anything bad about her, ever. Because that's genuinely what it seems like sometimes. It seems like you would easily get just cancelled for recognising facts. First thing I had no idea about, obviously everyone was upset that Charles left Diana for Camilla. People are still pissed off about that, like 30 years later or something, because it was so pro Diana. I never knew any of this stuff. I was likely just too young at the time, but no one's ever spoken about it even in the last 20 years, and I don't think that's fair. I had no idea that Camilla and Charles were in a relationship prior to Charles meeting Diana.
Charles lost his heart to her almost immediately.
The reason that Charles married Diana and not Camilla, the person he was genuinely in love with, was because of the monarchy. It's one of the things that has had to change. But previously, you were not allowed to marry anyone who was divorced, and you were not allowed to marry anyone who was not of like royal descent, basically. That has changed since. However, at the time of Charles and Diana's marriage, that wasn't the case. Therefore, Charles had to marry someone else. Yes, technically he could have married nobody. He was not allowed to marry the person he chose to. Also, Charles had already dated, I believe, Diana's sister, so Diana knew that he was already in love with somebody else, and he knew that he'd already dated her sister. So, no disrespect to Diana, but I don't think, with those two tiny pieces of information, that was never going to be a healthy relationship.
Even at the time, the red flags were becoming obvious.
Dating someone that your sister had dated, marrying someone who you knew was in love with somebody else, and was only marrying you because of monarchy tradition. She knew this when she got into that relationship. Everyone, again, sides with Diana, saying that Charles was completely evil for doing that. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. He openly married someone else when he was clearly in love with somebody else. That is wrong. Like, this wasn't kept from Diana. Diana knew. And I didn't know about that because all I ever heard for the past 20 years was Charles cheated on Diana. That's all I ever heard. Not that he was in love with this person the whole time before they even got married. He cheated with her because he was always in love with Camilla and he never ever stopped loving Camilla. Does that not, in some ways, sound like a fucking romantic comedy? That actually, I'm not even kidding, that sounds like the sequel to the Devil Wears Prada book. I think it's The Revenge Wears Prada. Andy gets married to someone when she doesn't actually want to get married and she's still kind of in love with her previous boyfriend, Nate. She gets married, she has a kid, and then they break up. She gets back into a relationship with the person she was always in love with. That is a rom-com. I'm sure that's like a Shakespeare play as well. Like, you're not allowed to marry the person you want to marry, the person you're in love with, so you marry somebody else. You know, behind the scenes or whatever, you're sneaking off with the person you're truly in love with. He was always in love with Camilla. Just a side note, but people consistently bringing down Camilla for her looks, saying like, oh my god, how could you leave Diana, this beautiful woman, for Camilla? Can we stop shaming women for their looks? I don't give a fuck if you don't like anyone. Again, I know I've said this so many times in recent videos, but the way you treat someone you don't like says everything about your fucking character. And shaming someone for the way they look is so fucked up. Whether they're a plus size or whether you think they're personally ugly or something, it's gross. It's so fucking gross. This is the stuff that made me be like, I'm not siding with Prince Charles and Camilla versus Diana, but it makes me recognise that they were not 100,000% in the wrong. They both made their bed and they had to lie in it. They both made that choice. They were both adults. Neither of them were forced into it. So Diana didn't follow protocol in a number of circumstances. This could have caused toxicity and or tension if Charles respected the monarchy. She also undermined him, which he may have felt, by outing that they were not physical in an interview. So yeah, so in, I think it's The Crown, or it's one of those sort of royalty TV shows, they show a lot of Diana and Charles arguing. Like I said, the reason that Charles didn't marry the person he wanted to marry was because of the monarchy and the institution. They would not allow him to marry the person he wanted to marry. So he followed what the institution protocols and married somebody else. So he'd already given something up, I would assume in his mind, for the monarchy, for the Queen. And then he sees the person he married, the person he gave something up for, consistently breaking protocol rules.
Though Diana was only 20 years old when she married Prince Charles, she was already rebelling against the rules and regulations of Buckingham Palace. She made the decision to edit the royal wedding vows, taking issue with the promise to obey her new spouse.
I can imagine that would consistently cause toxicity. And again, it's very like down-to-earth people's princess. I completely get that. But I can also see the other side where that could have caused toxicity, because you have no fucking clue what's going on behind the scenes. The Queen could have had a go at Charles saying that this isn't right, why did you let her do this, you know that's not part of protocol. I have no idea if this is the case. I'm just saying that I know that there's been multiple times where Diana had broken protocol or the rules of the institution, and I can imagine if Charles respected those protocols, especially as he was next in line, that would have caused toxicity in any relationship. And that could have caused Charles to cheat, feeling that being disrespected or undermined in that interview where Diana admitted that it never physical, for example.
It was there, and then it fizzled out about 7 years ago. Instinct told me. It's just so odd. I don't know.
Although Diana didn't go into too much more detail about the couple's intimate life, she'd already said more than enough to make it painfully obvious that her relationship with the prince was by no means thriving.
He could have felt like Camilla was the only person that understood him, and therefore he went to the person he knew and loved and understood him for comfort and attention, because his own wife was not giving him the support or respect that he maybe thought he deserved. Again, complete speculation, but I could see why that could cause toxicity in any relationship. Disrespecting your partner or undermining your partner consistently, it causes a lot of underlying hate or rage. So then Diana cheated on Charles with her bodyguard and other men too, whilst Charles only cheated with Camilla. So yeah, everyone talks about Charles cheating on Diana. Yeah, like I said, 100% wrong. I never think cheating is right. However, people ignore the fact, I feel like, that Diana cheated on Charles with her bodyguard and with multiple other people.
While Diana felt jealousy and rage in response to the affair, she also looked elsewhere for love, specifically to her bodyguard.
Because when I was 24, 25, I fell deeply in love with somebody who worked in this environment. And he was the greatest friend I've ever had.
Diana said the relationship was never sexual, but she did eventually take other lovers once it was clear Charles had all but abandoned her for Camilla.
Whereas Charles only cheated with one person, the person he was always in love with. I'm not trying to diminish Diana whatsoever. She wasn't as perfect as people try to make out. People hating on Charles for loving this one person. I don't know, in some ways it just seems hypocritical because you're not giving the same character trait to the person you're saying is better. Diana spoke in one of those interviews. She said she hurt herself rather than hurting all of you, so all of like the British public, I guess.
In her equally hopeless situation, Diana developed an eating disorder.
And they all blamed the failure of the marriage on the bulimia.
But according to Diana, it was the rejection she felt from the family and her failing marriage that led to the development of the eating disorder in the first place.
I decided to do a more discreet thing, which ultimately wasn't discreet, but I chose to hurt myself instead of hurting all of you.
And this seemed weird to me. I've spoken openly about my depression, that I used to be a cutter, that I've had suicidal thoughts. So this is not me trying to diminish Diana. The thing that weirded me out about that interview, because I'd never seen it before, was the smirk at the end.
I chose to hurt myself instead of hurting all of you.
Now that smirk could mean one of two things. It could either have meant that she was lying and trying to manipulate the public to be on her side rather than Charles's. Again, just theory. Or it could be that because she had those thoughts that she's never been able to speak about previously and openly before, obviously been openly cheated on by Charles consistently, that could have been her way at revenge to openly talk about that struggle to bring down the royal family altogether. There could also be a third reason, but that's what I took from that. It wasn't the way she said it or anything, it was the smirk at the end. It didn't sit right with me, because normally if you talk about hurting yourself, it's a very shameful thing. It's hard to talk about ever cutting yourself or hurting yourself. Like I said, that smirk just felt out of place to me. So again, there was another interview where she was talking about becoming bulimic due to the toxicity in her marriage. But she'd openly spoken about learning bulimia from her sister at a young age. So either she misspoke, meaning that she relapsed and she became bulimic again, or she was, again, could have been revenge to say that she hurt herself, whether it was cutting or bulimia. Eating disorders are a way of self-harm, and therefore, again, it could have just been a way to hurt the royal family, or it could have been genuine. It's just, it's impossible to know because we can't exactly ask her any of these things. But I'm just trying to be fair on all sides and not try and be completely biased to Diana. I always feel like a lot of people are. Okay, so another, unfortunately, what appeared to be a vindictive move from Diana was that she was planning on having the crown pass over Charles whilst they were married.
A year before the couple divorced, Diana expressed doubts about Charles being fit to rule as King of England. Charles began to think that Diana was colluding with Sarah Ferguson, who was her best friend and the then wife of Charles's brother, Prince Andrew. His fear, according to royal biographer Tom Bower, was that upon the Queen's death or abdication, Andrew would become regent until William's 18th birthday, at which point he would become king, passing over Charles entirely. Not only did he distrust his wife, but Charles also became convinced his own brother was in on the supposed plan.
Charles had been in waiting for the crown while they were married for easily, 40 years? Well over 30. Trying to make sure your husband doesn't get what he was born for. It very much could just be a revenge thing because she was being cheated on. She felt like he wronged her and therefore she was a wronged woman. And sometimes wronged women do really crazy thing. It just, that point does not sound like the people's princess that everyone says that she was. This video is 100% going to probably sound super pro like King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla. This is not why I'm making the video, trying to shit on Diana at all. I don't think she was a terrible person. I just don't think she was perfect. I think she was human. I've got a lot more points, but I hope it's not coming off that way. So they then got divorced.
Initially, the couple opted for a long-term separation. By 1996, they had been separated for nearly 4 years. Diana's former butler said that all changed when Diana received a letter from the Queen that essentially ordered a formal divorce. On August 28, 1996, the tumultuous royal marriage officially came to an end.
And Charles married Camilla. Diana dated a person of colour.
The pair reconnected after a charity event attended by Dodi's father, Mohammed Al Fayed. Mohammed reportedly connected with Diana and offered up one of his homes as a holiday retreat. The vacation was a lavish one, taking place largely on Mohammed's yacht, the Jonicle. After the boys returned home to London, Diana and Dodi took their own trip on the Jonicle to the south of France. A bodyguard assigned to Dodi and Diana on the trip told The Sun that the princess appeared to be having a wonderful time and that she began each morning by walking out and looking to see how many photographers were tailing the couple.
This is why Harry thinks that she was killed, because she dated someone of a different ethnicity. Harry thinks that the royal family is racist. Diana was then chased by the paparazzi whilst being driven by a drunk driver.
I think one of the hardest things to come to terms with is the fact that the people that chased her into the tunnel were the same people that were taking photographs of her while she was still dying on the back seat of the car.
In the new documentary, Prince Harry not only blamed the paparazzi for the crash that killed his mom, but said they stood by and watched her die.
She'd had quite a severe head injury, but she was very much still alive on the back seat. And those people that caused the accident, instead of helping, were taking photographs of her dying on the back seat. And then those photographs made their way back to news desks.
Dozens of photographers chased after the car Princess Diana was in just before it lost control inside a Paris tunnel 20 years ago. The driver was under the influence of drugs and alcohol at the time.
That accident caused multiple deaths, including hers. A lot of blame is put on the royal family for this accident. I honestly don't understand why it is. From my understanding, her car was chased by paparazzi for them to get photos. To the point where, after the accident, where she was passed out and other people in the car had already had their lives taken, paparazzi was taking photos of that.
Personne ne l'avait reconnue. Donc moi quand je me suis approché, voilà, c'était une personne blonde qui était assise au sol, qui reprenait conscience à ce moment-là et qui me regarde et me dit voilà, oh my god, what's happened, donc un peu agité. Donc j'ai essayé de la calmer et puis lui dire de rester calme, qu'on allait s'occuper d'elle et puis après elle est retombée dans le coma. Quand je suis arrivé, il n'y avait personne autour de la voiture. C'était le vide complet autour de la voiture. Donc on l'a sortie du véhicule pour l'allonger sur ce qu'on appelle un matelas immobilisateur. Et c'est à ce moment-là, à partir du moment où on l'a allongée, que le médecin a détecté qu'elle était en arrêt cardiaque. Donc on l'a massée. L'équipe l'a massée et au bout d'une vingtaine de secondes, elle a repris conscience. Enfin, elle a repris une circulation. Elle n'a pas repris conscience. Elle a repris une circulation, ce qui a permis son transfert dans l'ambulance. Pour moi, oui, c'est un accident.
Really gross. I'm pretty sure that's now illegal to do that. I don't understand why all of their deaths, not just Diana's, but all of their deaths was not put on paparazzi for chasing them. I don't understand why. I assume it was her bodyguard or her driver or whatever. I don't understand why he was drunk while he was driving. He never should have got in the car driving those people. I do feel like it was partly his fault and his responsibility for driving in a state where he clearly shouldn't have been. The rest of it, 100% I put on the paparazzi for following them. Now, I don't know, because I don't know enough about the situation. I don't know if maybe they were royal family paparazzi, and maybe that's why the responsibility is laid at the royal family's door. I don't know. From what I understand, it was just French paparazzi, but I could be wrong. So Harry continuously, like I say, puts the responsibility of Diana's death with the royal family. So I don't know if that's because he knows more than we do, because there's a lot of around deaths in the royal family, etc., that we will never know because it's behind closed doors, it's private, it is need to know basis. If there is more information, I would be surprised he hasn't said anything, because he's no longer part of the royal family. He has no reason to be quiet about that. So the other thing that confuses me about Harry is that if there is more that he knows, and he knows that it was the the royal family fault for her death, why has he been so close to his father, his grandmother, everyone in the royal family up until that point? If he knew, I wouldn't be warm to them. It just seems odd. He definitely seems like he has some sort of trauma from losing his mother. Completely understandable. I do question how much he truly would have known about his parents' marriage, because he blames a lot of what happened between Charles, Camilla and Diana. There is a lot of blame there. There was definitely a lot of arguments, I imagine, between Charles and Diana, and if he witnessed that, he may have put all of that down to Charles. But like I said, I genuinely think there was a lot of toxicity throughout that relationship, not just because he was cheating, but because there was this rule breaking constantly. I don't know, that just never seemed like it was ever going to be, in hindsight, never seemed like it was going to be a healthy relationship. And I don't think that if you're a child of 7, 8, 9, whatever, that you would understand that toxicity, because I wouldn't have understood my parents' toxicity. I didn't understand it until I was much, much older. And I know that there's probably a lot of stuff in my parents' relationship that I never knew about and I never will know about. I imagine Charles wouldn't want to tarnish their mother's image to children. Like, that is a really gross thing to do. So if there was anything, I wouldn't be surprised if it was kept from them, so that the only thing they remembered of their mum, the best times. Which, speaking of, I'm not going to sound so pro-Charles, but I think people need to stop blaming him 30 years later for cheating on his wife. Hundreds, thousands, millions of people, women and men, and everyone in between, cheat. Do I think it's right? No. But loads and loads and loads of people cheat. Jesus fucking Christ. It just shows they're human. Like I said, he was 100% committed to Camilla. As far as I'm aware, he hasn't cheated on her because he was always in love with her. He wasn't cheating with every other woman he could get his fucking hands on. He cheated with the woman he was always in love with. I think people look at this whole situation between Diana and Charles and Camilla. Diana in general, I think they have a lot of rose-tinted glasses for her. I definitely think that there's things that people, like I said, seem to overlook. I don't in any way think that she deserved to be cheated on or die or anything like that. I just don't believe she was the angel that everyone seems to portray her as 20, 30 years later. I think that they both entered a marriage that they should never have. I think it was doomed from the start. I think they were always going to get divorced. I mean, if you think about it, how many fucking marriages end in divorce nowadays? Well over 50%. I wanted to go through those points just because, like I said, I am not pro-Charles and anti-Diana. That is not what this video is, although it probably comes off of that. The only reason I'm talking about all the breaking the rose-tinted glasses points is just because I never heard about these. Never. It's not like I go looking for it. But whenever you hear about Princess Diana, it's always the people's princess, and she was perfect, and she was wronged, and she was cheated on. It's always so negative against the royal family, and there's nothing ever said to highlight that she was not perfect. It takes two to create a toxic relationship. Yes, she was cheated on, but she cheated as well. I don't know, she didn't seem very pro-monarchy. There was quite a lot of circumstances where she was doing things against the rules. In The Prince and Me,
Where's Paige?
That our country's commitment to
I was just being nice to some kids.
which every paper felt compelled to report.
Well, what's wrong with that?
That you did it in a new state-of-the-art, government-funded, billion-kroner hospital, which suddenly all these newspapers have no interest in mentioning.
Oh.
so it was bringing attention to the wrong things. Yes, it was a lovely photo and a lovely moment, but it was bringing attention to the wrong moment. Like, the wrong things were why they were there, which is why they are meant to follow process and protocol. And I don't know, that kind of, in some ways, reminded me when I started reading all of these things. Those are just some of the points that I found out recently I wanted to share, because I don't think that Charles and Camilla are the worst people alive that everyone seems to think they are. I think there were two people who were in love at the wrong fucking time. Diana was definitely wronged in the situation, but she wasn't an angel. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give this a like and subscribe if you feel like it. I'd really appreciate it. Let me know if there's any other royal background that you want me to do some digging on, and I can definitely do that. It's going to take me a little while to do some research, I imagine, but I can definitely do that. I've been wanting to read up some more about the Queen and her 70-year service for a while, so maybe I'll do something like that. But yeah, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye!